Who is January Jones? She is not a young, beautiful, talented actress on Mad Men. She is not an older, gorgeous, exotic dancer from the Johnny Carson Show. She is an author, and she wrote, Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. She is a reality TV golf personality with World High Stakes Golf televised on HDNet. She is a humorist and winologist expert. She is your featured host today on January Jones Sharing Success Stories. So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and listen to Ms. Jones with her eclectic roster of guests as you learn life's lessons. These stories plus sharing equals success. Welcome, and remember, beware, because you are entering the no whining world of January Jones.
Now let me ask you a question. Are you a veteran? Or do you know someone who is a veteran? Well, I do. My husband's a veteran. Do you know someone who has just returned from a recent deployment, trying to get back into the swing of things? Have you ever wanted to know how to find a job, one that pays well and that you like? Can you imagine how difficult it is to return to civilian life after being in a war zone for who knows how long? Tell me, have you heard about an amazing book that just recently launched called Deployment to Employment? Now, would you like to meet someone who has some of the answers that we're looking for? Are you ready to learn how to be successful in your job search? A guide for military veterans transitioning to civilian employment. If you can answer yes or maybe to any of these questions, then you are in the right place. And I would like to welcome you to January Jones Sharing Success Stories. Today I will be introducing you to my guest, who has been on the show many times before. He is a success coach extraordinaire, and he will provide us with wonderful, informative, inspirational lessons today, and some really, really great advice out there for our veterans and their families who are listening. I'm pleased to announce that our show now has over 1.7 million listeners to date. Also, LinkedIn has announced that my profile was one of the top 5% most viewed during 2012. Now, let me tell you about my guest. He is a national award-winning executive recruiter and is regarded as a guru in the employment field. He is a trainer of recruiting offices nationwide and is a frequent guest on radio programs all over America. My guest heads Client Staffing Solutions, an executive recruiting agency, and recently founded the Directional Motivational Group. My guest has now introduced another book just recently in the Directional Motivation series entitled Deployment to Employment, a guide for military veterans transitioning to civil employment. It provides key assistance to transitioning veterans seeking to find employment within the private sector. This resource has been described by the military community as being an absolute necessity for transitioning veterans seeking employment. My guest himself describes his book as his heartfelt way of saying thank you to all the men and women who have sacrificed so greatly in providing us with the freedoms that we enjoy today. Readers state that they enjoy his folksy, easy-to-read and apply common-sense approach to the critical issues faced in the workplace today. And I will also say that I have read the book and I agree it is wonderfully written and is probably one of the most helpful books that I have ever seen for military returning veterans. And it's my pleasure to welcome back to the show again today, Russ Hovendick. Hi, Russ.
Hello, January. Great to be back with you.
Oh, it's so exciting. Now tell me, when did the book launch and how long did it take you to write and what was your motivation?
The book launched about 2 weeks ago, so
Okay.
it's on Amazon right now,
Uh-huh.
and
Exciting.
already it's in its category. We're ranked number 96 in
Uh-huh.
that category, which is really, really good considering we haven't done anything really to market it. And
Uh-huh.
but word of mouth has already taken over, and we're seeing pretty neat things happen. This book really took me. I would say probably about a year and a half in the making,
Uh-huh.
and I originally thought I would have it done a lot sooner than this, but each time I sat down to craft it, I realized that I needed to put something else in, or I'd interview another veteran and find out there was another issue that they were dealing with, and so the completion of it took a little bit longer than what I had anticipated, but I think it's a much better book because of taking those steps as well. And very, very exciting. I'm really excited about it. But it's so exciting to know that you can touch somebody's life and make a difference.
Absolutely. And that is such I'm exciting to share this book with our listeners. Obviously there's a huge disconnect between employers and transitioning military service members. Employers aren't seeing the tremendous value that ex-military personnel can bring to the table, are they?
No, I think there's more of an awareness now than there was, but still at the same time, you're seeing employers that are really staking their futures of their organizations on individuals that are working for them presently. These are individuals that maybe, and I don't want to talk down about the workforce, but there's individuals that would be marginal at best that are filling those positions right now. And with the competition that's taking place within the marketplace, the bottom line for companies is so close anymore. And so they're putting their faith and stock a lot of times in individuals that have been with them that really don't really care to make a difference, that really don't want to lead, and that really don't have the commitment level. So the answer for a lot of these organizations, without going into a lot of detail, is in our military individuals transitioning, because they already have the leadership, they already have the commitment, the dedication, and the desire to make an impact. It's just been phenomenal to get the feedback. I've placed lots of veterans through the years now, and to get the feedback from employers when they talk about the difference that they've made to their environment, and not just in their little segment, but the effect that it's had on total manufacturing environments, for instance, and their attitude and their desire, and how it's rubbed off on others that have brought them up to higher levels. So it's really cool, very cool to see.
Well, I know you don't personally have a military background, and I know you don't claim to be an expert on transitioning from military to civilian. However, you've been a recruiter who has learned something every single day for the last 20 years, and you've picked up some great advice. Now, what do you say to some of these employers when they say, why would I hire a military person to supervise, lead my team, run my plant, join my team? What do you say to them when they're very unsure about hiring someone with a military background?
A lot of times I'll come back and when I talk to them, I say, well, think about this. This individual may be, 20 years old, 20, 22, 24. They have led, 25, 30 troops in life or death situations. They've made decisions at a moment's notice. They have motivated, they've trained, they've done all the things that employers are looking for. They bring a maturity level that far exceeds the commonplace worker today, and I'm talking about a younger workforce. The maturity level that they bring is phenomenal. And again, the impact that they can make on an organization is exceptional.
Well, I think sometimes employers are worried too. They'll say, why would I hire an Army reservist or a National Guardsman? Because just when you need them most, they'll get called up for service. What do you say to that one?
And I've heard that response many times.
I bet.
What's interesting, it goes back to the dedication of our veterans. It really does. Many times because they know they're going to be gone for weekend drills or a monthly drill or that type of thing, they will work their schedule to such that they've got an inward obligation that they believe. They actually work harder. They will do more to make sure that employer is not left in a lurch. It's been really good. Plus, what happens in many manufacturing operations is the workforce themselves really supports the veteran community as well, and they pitch in. And so really what I found from employers after them being on board with their team is that they don't really see that has an influence really at all.
Well, I bet some of the employers who have military backgrounds themselves are probably a little bit intimidated when it comes to hiring a commanding officer, because they're going to say, I'm looking for a team player, not someone who shouts orders and expects people to obey. I think they might be intimidated. Don't you agree?
Oh, there can be some intimidation. And, one of the things that what I found with some veterans, some veterans do want to try and use their rank to intimidate. And
really?
One of the things that I do that's probably different from a lot of recruiters is I do a lot of consultative, or I take a very consultative approach when I'm working with individuals. And I'm very upfront. I'll tell them, this approach that you're taking is not going to, do very well for you in the workplace. Because you've been an E8, E7, whatever the case may be. Now you're starting over. And that's one term that I use with them a lot. You are starting over. You have to prove yourself once again. Now, if you have and maintain the attributes that you say that you have, which I'm certain that you do, having led as many people as you do, that you're going to rise very fast. So if you're coming in at a lesser rank, so to speak, within the civilian workforce, and you bring the same attributes that made you successful within the military, you're going to rise very quickly. Now, for an employer, the intimidation factor, once I work with them and they start to realize that, we really haven't had any issues with that. But I know it does exist out there. And I would encourage employers to have that conversation and be very open with it. When an individual is interviewing with them that may have held a higher rank than they did in the military, to have that open conversation with them. Life is about communications.
Sure.
And I think that's where people really miss it. And that's one of the things that every book that I've written to this point, really, I get the feedback from readers all the time talking about, this book it's not just this, like for interviewing. It's not just an interview book. It's about communications. It's about how to take and present yourself, that type of thing. Same with deployment to employment. Same thing. Communication, how to bring out the real who you are to the table.
And basically, for these people who are in commanding officers or have had a lot of responsibilities, you're not asking them to dummy down when they go in for this interview. You're just asking them to be a little more reserved and hold back a little. And as you said, the cream does rise, and I think it does happen. Now, what about employers who they question whether they should hire a retired military person because they have a guaranteed income and they feel that maybe they won't put forth the effort and that this job is just extra padding income for them? What do you say to them?
Well, there's no difference between, in some ways, people are people. And what I always say, all right, you know what? There's going to be people that fit into this category. There's going to be people that fit into that category. Same within the civilian sector. You're going to have individuals that may have retired from some or other organization. They're willing and desiring to make an impact. You could hire them, and they'll do a great job. However, you could have the same individual or same type of individual that maybe is retired from some organization and just is looking to fade off into the sunset, but wants a check besides. So you have that. You have the same thing with military. But what I find with military individuals, by and large, is that they have an internal passion to make a difference. And they still have a burning desire to take and perform, and they have a level of expectation of themselves that is so high. And So employers shouldn't be concerned about that. They really, really shouldn't. They can have the pension coming in per month, but there's an internal value system that military veterans have that really supersedes those types of feelings and desires that way. And I find that to be the case. Now, there's still exceptions, yes, but by and large, you'll find veterans, they just want to make a difference.
You're so right about that, Russ. I mean, my husband is a veteran, and he's 100% disabled. However, like most military veterans, he is an A-type, always contributing 100 to 150%. I mean, these men will give you everything they've got. So I really recommend, if you're considering hiring someone with a military background, go for it. And, right now, what I'm going to go for is a commercial about your hostess. And when we come back with Russ Hovendick, we'll talk more about deployment to employment with some advice from the veterans, telling them how to start over and recognizing their own value. We'll be back with Russ in just a second. I hope you will order Russ's book today, too, Deployment to Employment. And Michael Harry says of this book, in a nutshell, this book is a must-read for military personnel and veterans seeking to significantly increase their odds of landing a great job. I agree. Now, Russ, what do you tell our veterans about starting over and recognizing your value? Because I know a lot of them are maybe a little bit insecure about going into this civilian job market.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I always encourage them, number one, is that employers, by and large, are looking to hire them, but they're still going to have to compete within the private sector employment realm. So one of the things that they need to do is to take and prepare for what's ahead. And a lot of times what you find is that there's a tendency to go ahead and kind of put their head in the sand. They realize that transition's coming up. There's so much information that's coming at them. They're getting bombarded. Yeah. And so what I do is really go through the steps to take and recognize internally, okay, what have you done? What are the things that you've been able to accomplish? And how do you take and verbalize that and realize that you're basically starting over? It's okay, all right? Let me walk you through it. And this book, one of the things that I think, I get the feedback on it, is veterans that have read this said, this is such an encouragement to me.
Yes, yes.
and that really, melts my heart, because that's what it's meant to be, is an encouragement to help them through that.
Yeah. And you state that your secret weapon is knowing your worth. A lot of unsuccessful job applicants, the biggest hurdle they face is often themselves. They do everything they're supposed to do, resume, cover letters, questions, follow-up, but they're not winning over the employers. I think this rejection is because they fail to recognize their own value, and they really don't know how to promote themselves sometimes, do they?
Mm-hmm. Right. And that really comes back to the communication and the presentation of themselves, but really reaching internally and saying, all right, so what is it that makes you different? Because God made every one of us different. Every one of us has a talent that somebody else does not have. So what is it that you bring to the table, and what makes you unique? And then bringing that to the surface and using that in the examples that you use in the interview, and so that your employer sitting across the table can understand that. Just to say that you led 20 troops, or just to say that you drove a tank, does not give them a clear indication of who you are and really what makes you different and why they should reach out to you.
Right.
And so I go through a lot of exercises to really bring that out and to help them understand that value.
Share this example, the common example. A driver will typically say, I was just a driver. The most important thing I did was deliver stuff from one place to another. What do you say to that driver to help him get that job he needs to get?
Really what I do is I take him back there and say, all right, so what were your responsibilities? Yes, you drove the truck or whatever the case may be, but in addition to that, what were you responsible for? And who was counting on you? And what type of preparations did you have to do prior to making that trip or those trips? What type of situations did you encounter, and what What did it, what types of decisions did you have to make on the fly? All these things, bringing to light those things so that they can take and apply those same attributes in the interview session, so that they realize, they're a decisive person. They take great value in what they do. A lot of these individuals, that might be at the lower ranks, maybe they haven't had leadership, have a tremendous following amongst their peers. And when I say peers, I'm talking about veterans, because their lives depended on these guys.
Sure.
And a lot of times they don't realize that they'll just say, well, I just drove a truck. Well,
yeah.
You didn't just drive a truck. You were responsible for all your platoon or whatever the case may be, whoever you're hauling, or the supplies. That they say, well, all I did is deliver supplies. Those supplies are absolutely critical. I would think if you went back into, Hitler invading Russia, he would realize how valuable supply chains are.
Right.
His troops starving to death and not having the type of equipment that they needed to win the war.
And recognizing your own value, you have action item FAAB plus sheet, and you hear the word fab, you might think it's a shortcut for fabulous. However, the fab sheet lists a person's feature, accomplishments, and benefits. How do you help these veterans fill out a fab sheet that will just knock these employers out?
First, when you talk about features, we're really talking about, okay, what was the role and what were the responsibilities that you had? In that role, then, when we move on to the accomplishment side, is what did you accomplish in that role? What are the things that you can take and really hang your hat on? All right, and now think in terms this way: having these the accomplishments and these responsibilities, how would that be a benefit to a future employer? And so all of a sudden you're able to relate to what an employer is truly looking for, and they're able to relate to you. Huge.
Right. Yeah, and employers are looking for people who are problem solvers, inherently hands-on, work well in teams. They don't have to be babysit. They learn quickly. They excel in diverse environments. They're task-orientated and respect every aspect of their job. I mean, that totally describes veterans, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really, really does. They're outstanding.
And, of course, a lot of them don't realize their value, so they have to steer clear of the entitlement mentality. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I've had individuals that have either, stopped by the office or they've called me on the phone, and I deal with a lot of veterans, and you can hear it in their voice. Okay, they came out of the military. They were informed through ACAP or I'm not putting them down. I don't mean it that way. They give the projection or the perception that employers are rolling out the red carpet. They are falling at the veterans' feet. All they have to do is just put their name in the hat, and they got a job. And what's on top of that mentality is that they feel that they deserve that job because they've already served their country.
Sure.
It doesn't mean, and I want to mention if there's veterans listening tonight, it doesn't mean that we don't appreciate your service. Not at all. It doesn't mean the employer doesn't appreciate your service. But at the same time, you're still in a competition, and there are no handouts. There really aren't. And so to say, I deserve this job because I've served my country is wrong. And what we find sometimes is that the veterans will adopt this entitlement mentality, and it's a killer to them, because that sense or that how would I say that mentality is picked up on right away by employers. And so
you're advocating that there be open to building relationships with civilians. Your action items: do research, join virtual communities, LinkedIn, Facebook, research events, and the one I love the best is get business cards.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, the designing your card and the print shop, because I don't think veterans realize how important it is. My only comment on business cards, I think they need to have a small picture so people will remember you.
You could. I've got the kind of face that probably better not have it on the business cards. Don't remember this. But, it's unfortunate because employers have said, there was a guy that came through here.
Yeah.
We really liked him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you just got, you might have been to a job fair, you might have been to a veterans, gathering, that type of thing, and you left them with nothing in their hand and kind of off in the night. And so by putting together a card and then also defining the characteristics that really make you stand out, just something to make it a little bit different, a little more memorable that you can put into people's hands. And, I've had individuals say, well, that sounds pretty corny. It doesn't to employers. It really doesn't.
Well, there's advice in this book for everyone, because your last tip on business cards is keep some of them with you at all times, carry them in your wallet, stash some in your car. And this is so true. You never know when you're going to need them. And I couldn't tell you how many times I've gone to look in my wallet to give someone a business card, can't find one, forget to put it in there. So this is good advice whether you're a veteran or a civilian. We're going to take a break and hear from my sponsor, and when we come back with Russ Hovendick, we're going to talk about finding where you fit in and applying your military training to your personal job search. We'll be right back. I highly recommend Deployment to Employment. And we're going to talk about finding out where you fit in if you're a veteran. Could you give us the pros and cons of looking at big corporations?
Sure. Can you hear me, January?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
All right. I lost you there for a second, so I wasn't sure.
Okay.
Yes. Every corporation has its own culture, and I think it's important for veterans to realize that and to really define what it is that you're truly looking for, because a lot of times there's that, everybody says, okay, I'd like to be with a Pepsi, or I'd like to be, with some of the larger Fortune 500 companies, that type of thing, which can be excellent, and they're great employers, not a question. The question is, do you fit them? And what I mean by that, in terms of some of your larger corporations, there's a tendency that you might get what we call siloed. And what that means is that you come in, you have a responsibility level, but you really don't have, you're more segregated, and so you don't have the impact upon the entire organization. You have an impact in a small, you're a small fish in a large pond, so to speak.
Right.
And
Sure.
So now, Fortune 500 companies or large organizations like that many times have more dollars for R&D, and they have more dollars for development, that type of thing. But you may not get as much in terms of promotional opportunities as fast. You may not get exposure to decision-making processes as much as you'd like, and decisions actually move much slower. Now, if you combine or compare that to a smaller organization, for instance, you may come in and wear a ton of hats. And you're in the center, you're in the thick of things, you're making decisions, things are coming at you right and left. And but keep in mind that even though those decisions can be made quickly, you may not have the resources behind you, as far as a company, to do the things that maybe you'd like to do. And that you think need to happen because there's just not the resources available. And the promotional opportunities, you may have a flatline type of organization where there's not a lot of, it might be a family organization where, the top spots are already taken, that type of thing. Well, but it can prove very, very successful either way.
I love your advice about think outside the box, and I think this is what a lot of veterans have to do. Give us some examples of veterans that you've helped find employment who did think outside the box and found work.
One of the things that I do is I specialize in food and beverage manufacturing, so I work with a lot of manufacturers of consumer products across the country. And a lot of times veterans will say, well, I don't know anything about food. I didn't ask you to. And the employer's not asking you to. What they're looking for, going back like to our original conversation, they're looking for those attributes that you bring in terms of leadership, commitment, dedication, all those attributes. They're looking for that. And so when I talk about thinking outside the box, look at different disciplines, as well. Or sometimes, veterans will say, well, I want this position as their ideal position, that their long-term scope. Will be willing to be flexible enough to maybe even look at hourly roles, if it would allow you to get the type of training, if they have very good foundation, in terms of development programs, things like that can help you be successful and bring you more value long term. And so you might look at that.
Now, what about veterans who are interested in going back to school and they want to take courses? You said to check out the Military Times annual list of best colleges for vets. Do a lot of veterans take this option and continue their education?
Probably not as many as should. And, the schooling is there, the opportunity is there. So many times, we just don't take advantage of the opportunities. I'm talking about life in general. We don't take advantage of the opportunities that are presented before us. And I encourage that. Anytime that you can get more education, you're going to be better. One of the schools that I do a lot of work with in terms of veteran programs and that type of thing is Bellevue University, Bellevue, Nebraska. They're one of the top 10 military-friendly schools in the country. And I've done a lot of work with Dr. Mike Eccles, and he is with the veterans programs associated with the school. They're excellent. One of the things that's really good about a school like Bellevue or some of the other ones that are on this list is that they understand veterans. They understand the needs of the programs, and so they've taken really defined programs that are driven towards the veterans themselves. And so they have yes, they're going to have the business courses, but they're integrated in such a way that they really adopt to veteran needs as well, which I think are wonderful. So going in and taking some of these courses, taking courses that I think for one of the things that we're working on with them is designing courses that are going to help the veteran long term. And so what we're doing is we're talking to employers and saying, all right, we realize what your needs are today. What are they going to be tomorrow? What are the courses that veterans are going to need to take and be aware of and take that are going to make them even more valuable to the marketplace as well and to these employers that they're currently with? And I think that's a huge thing, not only in the veteran community, but with employers all over the country. And the next book that'll be coming out, and I'm not going to talk about what we're doing with it, but it addresses some of that.
Good,
well.
Good. Well, we'll do an interview when it comes out for sure. Russ, what I love most about your book, I love everything about it, but I love most that all of the chapters have action item, and these are items that tell you to what you can do, and it's just right in front of you, like find where you fit exercise, answer the following questions. If you had 1 year to live and were paid a decent income no matter what you did, how would you spend your time? What skills come naturally to you? What kind of environment do you thrive in? These are such powerful questions, because if they can sit down and answer these, they're going to find out a lot about where they need to fit in, won't they? Yeah,
absolutely. And, really, when you look at life in general, when people succeed, it's because they're in an environment where they have a passion and a desire to be in. And it's, I always say to people, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah.
Because if you find out that piece that really drives you, and then you take and you start to hone your career and your career choices and your education, like we're talking about, and the associations that you belong to, and the type of relationships you develop, you're going to find yourself migrating to those areas and having great success. And that's really what I encourage the veterans to do, is really to sit down and evaluate what is it that really trips your trigger, so to speak. And what do you want to do? What really drives you? Where's that passion at?
And nowadays there are so many wonderful resources available. Your other action item is go online to figure out what you want. And there's so many places that you can check out. And I also want you to share a little bit of your word on caution on starting businesses and partnerships. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, years ago I was in banking, and we'd see individuals that would come in, and I'm talking private sector now, where individuals say, "Hey, you know what? Bill and I are friends. We've been friends for years. We're going to start a business together. We're going to be a partner, or form a partnership." And in the banking community, there's a huge percentage of partnerships that fail, and part of it is partnerships are an ever-changing animal, so to speak, because the relationship changes. A lot of times what you find is that individuals say, well, he's bringing the brains, I'm bringing the money. Well, all of a sudden, right out of the blocks, you're not equal, because there's going to be more emphasis placed on one or the other, the brains or the money. And then as your business evolves, it changes, and the needs that may change for need for more money, it may need more brains, whatever the case may be, and so it's not even, and so it puts those ownerships or those partners at odds. And then you get family members that get in there, and saying, well, gee, how come he's working more than Bill's working, and I think my husband needs to have a break, and all the different things that come in. So there's a lot of issues that way. When I talk to veterans, I really caution them because there's such a fraternity and a brotherhood that exists when somebody's had somebody else's back in service.
Sure.
And they've gone through service. They've gone through many of them have gone through boot camp all the way through and finished their whole tour. And they come back and they say, you know what, we are blood brothers, and we're going to start something together. And it's great. That attitude is great, but you're coming back to an environment that neither one of you probably realize what's changed in terms of business in general. Do you have an equal footing, in terms of what you're going to bring to the table? And there's all these adjustments that veterans are making just to transform back into civilian sector, let alone try to run a business when the business, the failures of private business in general are so high. And so I think you really stack the odds against yourself coming in and trying to establish a partnership like that. And so I encourage... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're going to take a break now, but I love your advice to apply your military training to your job search, and that means get moving on the double and know the terrain. And if you need help with your job search, this is the book for you to get. We'll be right back with Russ. Welcome back with my guest, Russ Hovendick. Now, Russ, let's talk a little bit about crafting that killer resume and going for that job interview.
A lot of times veterans will use a lot of acronyms in the resumes, that type of thing, and so they understand it perfectly. But unless they're actually applying to a military contractor, for instance, or someone that's very familiar with military jargon, they're really going to struggle in that. And so what I encourage individuals to do, and actually we're working on some different programs through Bellevue University right now, too, on the recrafting of some different things along that side to help veterans. But is to craft the resume in such a way that it addresses what the needs are of an employer. So what I encourage people to do is number one, go out and actually research the job descriptions and pull the things that they're looking for out of those descriptions and put them into your resume if they apply, that you've done that, and so they talk about 3 years of leadership. Well, you've got 3 years of leadership, you've been there. All the different things. If you're supply chain, well, you've got supply chain experience. All the different things, and craft your resume that's going to really take and address the qualifications of that position. And so you may have several resumes and change the resumes to equate to what they're looking for that way. And in today's environment, a lot of them are computerized where they make the evaluation and kick you out. And so if you don't have the type of terminology in there that they're looking for, you're probably not going to be considered.
Okay, that's such very, very good advice. Now let's talk a little bit about the job interview. That's a tough one, isn't it, for everyone?
Hmm. It is.
Yeah.
A lot of times when veterans go in, they're still in the military a little bit in their mindset, so to speak. And so, what I encourage people to do is really to relax and to. I realize your responses are going to be yes sir, no sir, that type of thing, but also to take and formulate responses that go further than that. So, yes sir, I would not have an interest in there. No sir, that type of thing, and finish that sentence. And so what it does is it shows you a lot softer as far as rigidity. A lot of employers are really concerned about the rigidness of military and inflexible, that type of thing. And so by doing that, and also, communicating in such a way that you're not stiff and formal makes a big difference. Relax the party across the desk from you.
Well, I'm sure every military wife out there listening to you is loving your comments, because I'm still, after 43 years of marriage to my veteran, I'm still trying to get him to smile more, be less rigid, and get him to elaborate.
So I guess my response would be, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I understand.
Gotcha. Now, what happens when you have a job interview and it doesn't work out and you feel rejection? How do you deal with that?
I go back to sales philosophy, the 3 S's, and I don't know if I even put that in the book. This is when I'm talking to individuals. The 3 S's are some will, some won't, so what next? It's okay, because you're not going to connect with everybody. And that job, just because the job, they have an opening, doesn't mean it's the opening for you. You have to stay vigilant in your search. You have to continue putting resumes out. You have to continue doing those interviews. And as you interview, you'll actually get better in your interview as well, in your interviewing skills. Some people that I've talked to, veterans, have interviewed once or twice, and they got shot down, and they go, I don't think this interview stuff's for me. And yet, having spent some time with them on the phone and start talking to them about that and encourage them, they get back in the saddle, and they've had success. And so part of it's just a diligence to continue and being active in the marketplace, getting yourself in front of people, and again, doing the networking and all the things that are with that as well.
And you have some really terrific information on interviews. You have a section about interview bloopers. And it is just a total hoot, and really, really great advice. This is some of the things that you've got to read. And another thing you've got to do when you go for these job interviews is be aware of your face and try to smile. Don't you think that helps a lot?
Huge. And there again, the persona that you send, if they already have a preconceived idea of how you are, why confirm it? Smile. Smile. Make yourself softer. Give the picture of more flexibility, that type of thing. Very important. And what? Smiles capture people.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah. And the other thing is looking people right in the eye and with a big smile and making that personal connection. And I know sometimes after a military career, it's hard to do for some people because you're so used to that rigid persona. Now, we're talking next about decommissioning to a civilian life. This is a hard part of the whole experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And so decommissioning is really is a bit of you're always going to have the service in you.
Yeah,
you always have the military in you, but it's really taking and allowing yourself to come back and doing the things that are going to allow you to come back. And so that decommissioning is really taking and giving yourself time to adjust and doing the things that help you to adjust to the civilian sector again. If you come out of a battle zone, and and I have not been in the military, I'm going to tell you that again, but I have very good friends that have been in very fierce confrontations, and you don't just walk back and be the same person.
No.
You don't. And the expectations of individuals thinking that they're going to, okay, now I'm back, everything's going to be like it was, it'll never be the same.
No.
So understanding that where you're at, that's part of that decommissioning process. And then what I really, I work with a lot of chaplains right now. We'll talk about that if you'd like a little bit more.
Uh-huh.
But having the support group that you need around you for that decommissioning that we're talking about is really, really important.
Mm-hmm. It's such a transitional phase, and you have to remember you're not alone. I know we go to the Veterans Hospital with my husband, and there's so many people there who reach out to you and have been where you've been, have stood in your been in your feet, walked the walk and talked the talk. So you just have to hang in there. Don't you agree, Russ?
Yep, you really do. And you hang around positive people.
Yes, that's
very important.
That's very important too.
That's why I'm talking to you. I want to be around a positive person.
Well, I don't allow any whining. So
I know.
Well, again, to my listeners, this book is a must-read if you're seeking to find a job, or if this is a must-read and this is a gift to give to some veteran you know. I know my husband's reading it, and he's been out of the military for over 40 years, but he's even finding things in it that are inspiring him. You've done quite a great service for our country by writing this book, Russ. I can't begin to thank you enough.
Thank you. One of the things that we're trying to do right now, and I'll share this, I don't know how much time we have left, but one of the things that we are really wanting to do, and I really want to appeal to your listeners, is we would like to be the number one new, the category is new releases on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And what I want to encourage the listeners to do is go to Amazon, buy this book. If they've got someone in mind, family member, coworker, everybody's got a transitional vet somewhere that they know, or they can take and purchase a book and take it to a military installation. They can take it to anything associated with the military. They can take it to VFW, whatever, drop it off to get the book in the hands of the people. Well, what I want to do tonight is to encourage your listeners to go and purchase the book. Not that I'm going to make a ton of money, because I don't on books. If you've ever written a book, you'll know that.
I know that.
But the thing is, with Amazon, to be able to take and have a number one new release takes on so much credence within the population of media. It's huge. And if we're trying to get a message out that can make a difference and an impact for veterans, this is a tremendous way to do it. And so I would like your listeners, within the next 24 hours, to go out and purchase this book in a massive way.
Oh, wonderful. And, that would be fabulous.
Make it different.
I hope everyone listening will do it. And remember my mantra, if you think it, then you can do it, and do it now. Do it today within the next 24 hours. And while you're there, write a good review for the book. That always helps too. So now, my dear friends, please stop whining, start smiling, and then start sharing our show with everyone you know. And if that doesn't work, start eating chocolate, lots and lots of chocolate. Again, thank you to my wonderful guest, Russ Hovendick. Remember to buy Deployment to Employment. This is January Jones, thanking you for joining me today on my journey and reminding you to take care and stay safe.